Hey guys, it's Cole, and I have got the Druid to max level in beta, which is going to be level 25, and I want to give you my thoughts and first impressions on it. I'm going to be playing the absolute heck out of it for a more in-depth understanding the rest of this weekend, but I can tell you I've had such a blast right now, and that's why I'm making this video, because I'm like, holy shoot guys, this is amazing. The first thing that I want to say is the obvious. The Druid is all about shapeshifting, but the way that you are going to be doing it in-game is actually really intuitive once you get the hold of it, and it is like really amazing. Actually, like, there used to be in other games where you'd be able to shapeshift a lot of micromanagement about like, oh, I can only use a bear ability when I'm actually a bear already. Then you need to transform into the bear, then use the skill. You just press the skill, you're gonna be automatically transformed into it. Likewise, if you're gonna use like a werewolf skill into like a human skill into like a bear skill, you're gonna be like going through like all the motions, and there are actually skill nodes already in what we can see at level 25 that actually promote that kind of gameplay, giving you rewards like, hey, we're going to give you some extra spirit. This kind of brings me to a point where the form that you're going to be actually the most in is kind of what you're going to assign to the auto attack button, which I don't know if that's the right way to say the button is the auto attack button, but that's kind of what it is in my mind. Just if you put the ability claw as your auto attack, or I should say basic skill, then you're going to be spending most of your time in werewolf form. Now if you put it as Maul, you're going to be spending most of your time in werebear form. The form that you get basically has a whole lot of different like paths and bonuses that you can get to it, so it's just like the werebear's a little bit more tanky, the werewolf's a little quicker, does a lot more poison effects, does a bit more damage. So little things like deciding which basic skill you're assigning to that button is really big. So you could arguably assign all of the basic skills to your buttons if you really wanted to. I'd really say that one strength of the Druid is that sure, okay, you could just lump everything purely into a pure werewolf build or into a pure sorcerer build, or kind of like spellcaster builds, which feels shockingly different from sorcerer, I should say. Even though I call it the sorcerer build just there, it's like you feel really different. Even just the way that you're using and interacting with your skills is totally different. And then likewise, you could also just spec for a full bear build. But I think what the strength is really going to be is in finding the builds that overlap in certain ways in order to make things work. You can even see this in certain particular legendaries and certain effects where it's just like, hey, as a werebear, your earth stuff you can actually use as a werebear, which is like, holy shoot, what? So like there's a ton of synergies here, and obviously in like a hey, I hit level cap and have really got exposed to the class video, this is not the video to like go into the details, but the potential is like crazy here. The fact that this is like on the fly in combat changes feels so freaking good. Let's get the elephant out of the room with saying that. Does say a like full magic caster druid build feel just like the sorcerer? No, not at all. Like the earth spells are kind of like abilities that you could like go a little bit more into like crowd control. They give you effects like fortify, they give like a massive AoE stun with the petrify, which is absolutely just mind-blowing. Tornado is like really crazy, and I had a real blast using it. I think that skill is actually really good. Sorcerer has nothing like that. Like people talk about Hydra on Sorcerer, and man, no, that has nothing on Tornado. Or like for Lightning Strike, you kind of build this up where you're like weaving in auto attack Lightning Strike because you want to keep spirit. And so what Lightning Strike does is when you consecutively use it, you can like make it AoE bigger and bigger until it like basically covers the entire room, which is just bizarre. And so if you let that fall off though, which has like a fall off time of like 4 or 5 seconds or something, then it'll shrink back to being tiny again. And so the way that you're even interacting with a skill like that is totally different than you would with sorcerer. Or like the earth basic skill, the earth spike, that is going to be a spike that I have noticed I can like use across walls and across terrain, and so I don't need to worry about like enemies like going at me. Like if I'm like trying to target like one of those fiendish shamans that are reviving things, I don't need to worry about the stuff in front of us. I will hit it, and that feels really cool. That was so frustrating on sorcerer sometimes, man. But like I'm seeing just so much crowd control with the like druid's kit. Like even if you just look at landslide, you're gonna be able to crush them between the two pillars. Sure, that's nice, but you're like able to interleave like all these immobilization effects. With tornado, I was just applying slow like everywhere, slows and vulns like everywhere. It was actually ridiculous. Let's move on to the companion skills, because I think that those are just so freaking cool. And so you get 3 different companion skills, and that's going to be wolves, your vine creepers, and ravens, and both of them are going to give you a passive effect as well as an active effect. And so the wolves passive passively are going to be kind of like tanks that also apply a damage over time effect, and then when you activate them they just jump into the fray, which is super handy for like getting around obstacles. And then you have the vine creepers, which are going to passively do like really good poison damage, and then around yourself just this massive freaking root. It is such a powerful AoE. I was thoroughly impressed with it. And then probably my least favorite was the ravens, where passively it's going to do some damage over time but not be able to tank, so kind of like half of the wolves effect. I think it ultimately is more damage than the wolves though passively. And then their active is going to be like a super good AoE effect, but it's like super pinprick size, so I wasn't like super in love with it. It was good at like choke points though. So what these skills more than anything add is it's like, okay, you could be like a full werewolf build, or you could be a full werewolf build with wolves, or you could be like a werebear build with earth spells with like vine tanglers for a ton of crowd control. This isn't even getting into a lot of the synergies. Like the werewolf form applies a lot of like this damage over time effect, and so you have a bunch of different skills in this tree that amplify or work alongside synergistically with poisons to like impact enemies in various different ways. And so you can use something like a vine creeper to help apply poison, and then that poison will like debilitate enemies, and that was like, it's just very synergistic, and I really have a lot to chew on this weekend, I'll say that. Also, like, the werewolf is stellar with like a ton of different poison effects. Like the werewolf is truly like crazy. Let's just talk about the werewolf in general, because I think it's absolutely badass. It is so cool. And so it's gonna be like a faster, more like bursty, in your face kind of like melee DPS, and it's gonna be able to do a lot of self-sustain. Not as much as the werebear, I'm not gonna say that like kind of outright, but it's gonna do like quite a bit. I felt very powerful. Like there are certain talents that you can take that are gonna give you mobility. Like it's like, okay, your second and your third swipe is gonna charge you to an enemy. Absolutely brilliant. Such a brilliant ability. I felt very clingy. Ew. Like that with all the different poison synergies and that, I felt really, really strong. It's giving you that fantasy of being a werewolf 100%. It's so cool. Then like the werebear, which stereotypically, okay, you could like take all the like defensive talents here. You could just go all the way into that, which I think is going to be very, 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 very strong, because if you even look at like some of the earth spells, like the petrify, that's a huge stun. Then you have the vine creeper, that's a huge root. Like you could really build this in a lot of really cool ways to be like a offensive crowd control tank and really rip things apart. But like for the werebear in general, very strong. I felt very durable, very, very, very actually dealing a lot of damage, I'll say that. I dealt more damage than I expected actually. So I just a huge fan. There's not much more I can say. It was a huge win. I'll kind of conclude this with saying the druid is absolutely able to do a absolute ridiculous comical number of things. It's just like you have so many different build paths. You can obviously build into like support with like slows and vulns, or like tanking, or you can do things like petrify, you can do things like immobilize enemies. Like it's just like, say you take the vine creeper with immobilization, you take the landslide with immobilization, and then you're just like a big bear wailing in their face. Like you're a nasty piece of work. I really have to say that the druid feels nothing like any of the other jobs. I mean, okay, sure, you click things to attack. Wow, so similar. But aside from that, it's like massively different, and I'm actually impressed with the way that they pulled this off. I think that this is a class that does fulfill that fantasy, and I was actually very worried, being like, would it be kind of like a weaker sorcerer? No, not at all, and I am actually so happy with it. And so there's my thoughts on the level 25 max level cap and bait on druid. Big fan. Well done. I'm a big fan.